I left the stadium going, what's going on with Leinster's lineout? And the biggest thing I could think of is Ross Maloney leaving, and that sounds maybe a little bit ridiculous, but Ross Maloney had an incredible influence there. He didn't play every big game. He played a lot of big games for Leinster because Leo and Stuart recognized that lineout was really key. He's obviously a good ball player, but he wasn't the same type of athlete as Joe McCarthy or James Ryan or Ryan Baird. And there's a premium on that. There's a premium on that defensively, to have people who can bash and be physical and counter ruck and etc. So obviously he's moved on, but he was the line-out guru in Leinster. He was Leo's right-hand man. He came up with the line-out menu. Even when he didn't play, he would have had an influence on the options, etc. And obviously now he's gone. It just looks like there's been no heir apparent. And this isn't just Leinster. This has obviously affected Paul O'Connell with Ireland as well, because there's a lot of the same people. There's a lot of the same people, bar Pete and Henderson sometimes off the bench in general in terms of that pack. So, and I think that the failing here is that whatever over the last 5, 6, 7 years, we have failed to develop really astute lineout callers. And you're seeing it at the weekend where once the initial plan doesn't doesn't work, there was an inability to problem solve, on the field, from the array of lineout callers that Leinster had, and we just looked rattled and on edgy. And as far as it's not just Leinster, Munster can be the same when Pete's not in the field. Connacht and Fairness have a couple of good line callers, but they're not, unfortunately, in the Irish mix at the moment. So it's an issue for them. They're going to obviously have to fix it. I don't know if Leo had handed over that responsibility to Robin. But there's going to have to be a lot of work done to develop. And in fairness, Ireland will benefit from too, because if Joe McCarthy or James Ryan Baird, we know, is into it, but obviously he's been injured. It's going to be a massive help to them, and in terms of their selection prospects for Ireland, but also in terms of helping Ireland win quality ball and Leinster win quality ball as well. So it's just not slick at the moment. Just two not straight, but in general, some good defense, to be fair, some good defense to Claremont. But I think that's the challenge now, is that teams look at Leinster's line out and think, right, we can win ball here, and they're actually using the same type of system that Leinster are using, where they're just blocking off areas of the field, areas of the line out. But Leinster just seem to not be smart enough in terms of being able to stim well quality ball.
When it comes to not having that Ross Maloney type figure, is it the case that you can turn to somebody like James Ryan or whoever you believe is going to be the constant or the most routinely featured player in that pack, and say, like, you need to take ownership of this, like actually adjust your focus towards building this menu for us, become the line-out guru that we've lost?
Yeah, but like it's a skill. Like place kicking is a skill. It's not something you can just you can give it to somebody this week and give them a menu, and it could work fine. But it's when it's the ability to stay composed when the first couple haven't gone well, when the defense are doing something that you didn't expect them to do, with the noise, be able to keep everybody else calm and composed. And like look, Devon Toner, the three best that I played with were Paul O'Connell. So Paul had his system. Paul had absolute respect from everybody. Paul had a way of giving you a look. He never had to give out to you because you would just do the job right. He would train you during the week to do the job right. He would train the lifters to do the job right. Everybody was on the same page. And then, worst case scenario, he'd back himself to win it one-on-one. And that's the issue for Leinster a little bit at the moment, is that they kind of have to find space to be able to win clean line-up ball, whereas Paul was able to be marked by Ben Kay was opposite Paul with a lifting pod. Paul has his lifting pod, and Paul would just back himself to win it in the air through his speed of jump and the throw from Flannery in general, who had a very fast throw, or Rory Best as well, had a very flat, direct throw. So speed was key. Devon would back himself to win it, marked up because he was 4 inches taller, and when you add the leverage probably at 6 inches. So Dev could go up against somebody. And then Leo wasn't really quick in the air, wasn't really tall, but was unbelievably good at organizing a line out that would find space. So they're three different. And now I look at Leinster's line out, I look at Ireland's line out, maybe Munster's line out at certain times as well. And I don't see a dominant line out brain there, and part of the issue here, Gav, is that when you're looking at kids in school, you're not bringing a kid from the academy or in the youth program. You're not putting him into the academy because he's a brilliant lineout caller. You know what I mean? You're actually going, oh, is he a good athlete? Is he going to grow another 2 inches? Is he going to be able to put on 10 kilos? Is he aggressive? And that's the issue, is that probably there has been good lineout callers in our system, but a lack of athleticism probably meant that they've dropped away. So now you have to basically hope that you have an athlete who has that ability to be a good lineout caller, or you have to coach him to do it. And the coaching part isn't simple, because you have to stick with them for a long time. They have to want to do it. And a lot of them are happier just catching the balls that are thrown in their area rather than actually having to take responsibility for it.
Yet another problem. Delightful. Happy
Monday. No, it's just the problem we have today.
It's a challenge. It's a challenge. It's a challenge. And it is kind of a cultural challenge, isn't it? Like, you're so right, Birch, because we in Irish rugby are so obsessed with trying to get the best athletes to match up to other nations. Those specialists maybe fall away, and there just isn't that culture. Whereas in French rugby, there is a big line-out culture and a massive scrum culture, and there's major respect for those areas of the game, even when you're a kid. Like in France, often it'll be a back row, it'll be that line-out forward in the back row who's calling and running the line-out. But there's several options in most squads to do that job. Guys who absolutely prioritize the set piece as part of their week. You look at someone like Billy Holland in Munster who did that. And often it's the guys who aren't the most athletically gifted and who have to compensate for but by being a specialist in that area. So it probably goes down a good few levels. And now Ireland are in this weird spot where Ryan was seen as the long-term successor. He called the Ireland line out as the primary caller for quite a while. And then it moved to Ty Byrne, who hadn't always been a line-out caller and had learned this skill more recently. And so now you're in that position where it's not really clear who the owner of that Irish line-out is, and maybe Leinster are in a similar position. But for them, week to week, there've got to be very quick improvements, and they've got to be better at adjusting. I think you flagged it really well, Birch. They in Ireland don't seem to be great at making kind of bailout calls when they're in the line-out, when they're marked up, and when the space isn't there, your drill has to be perfect, and their drill probably isn't at the moment. They're just a little bit slow with their movement. The throws aren't always perfect, and that's when you get picked off by a good defensive team like Clermont. They did a really good job, in fairness, and there's several guys in their pack who I'd say live and breathe line-out stuff and did a lot of work on that, and that's what I come back around to. It was great to see that battle. Obviously frustrating for Leinster fans, but it was a really, again, we're going to have that chat about the Champions Cup, but it was a proper Champions Cup game, and I know Clermont will probably struggle to compete for this competition at the top end, but it'd be brilliant to have them back in the mix. They put themselves in a good spot to try and kick on now, and they play Bath and Bristol in January, and you'd love to see them drive on as well, because they gave a proper test to a good Leinster team here.
Just to put into context before we move on from lineouts, what it takes to become an expert to the degree of Ross Maloney or Peter O'Mahony or Dar Murray or somebody like that. Like, I remember doing a piece on O'Mahony when he was named as Lions captain for the first test in 2017, and his buddy Kellogg's was telling me that when they were growing up in Cork and they both went to Pres, after the junior cert, Peter O'Mahony had that Pres team in over their summer holidays working on lineouts, because that was the age where you were first able to lift. So it's always been under 16. Obviously, under 16 has changed since to Junior Cup, but at this stage, it would have been the Bone Shield and Munster. And Pete's teammates could not believe that they were getting this text, like that they were going to have to go in and work on this. But he wanted a head start on it before they were even taught how to do it by their coaches the following September. And they worked on it, I think, twice a week all summer. And it sort of points to what you're saying, boys, about how it needs to be like an area of focus for an individual from schools or club level when you're a teenager. Like, just make it your thing.
It's a real basis of the game. It's where the highest percentage of tries come from. It's where you get platforms to get out of your own half. It's where the opposition get momentum. If it's failing, you can launch your maul. You can you've got to be good on defensive modes as well. So it's absolutely pivotal to any part of the game. And despite Leinster's completely malfunctioned, they still had enough. They'll be frustrated in other areas, probably just their ball security in the second half. They were just a little bit loose into contact with it. A couple of times they'd made good kind of half breaks or gained line momentum, and they just were a bit sloppy with the ball. So again, that's an easy fix up for them in the space of the next couple of weeks, which are going to be intriguing. They, like everyone, is going to have to mix up their team now and rest people at certain points. And Leo Cullen was talking about trying to get their cohesion back to a peak, but that is certainly going to be a challenge over the next few weeks.